Hi everyone, Tammy here. Welcome to my channel. So, how would you like to do a little sewing with me today? I'm still working on some Blythe doll dresses, and in fact, I've just fallen in love with this Jane Austen fabric that I've probably yapped about on I don't even know how many videos at this point. So, sorry, not sorry. But yeah, so this fabric is from the Blake Riley Jane Austen collection. I'm making more doll dresses similar to this one. This is actually one I made for Christmas, but I really like how it turned out, and it looks so good on this fakey doll that I just decided to keep it on her for a while. So yeah, she looks super cute in it with her melon colored hair. All right. So yeah, so I'm going to make some more of these. This is a pattern, again, by Dolly Delicacies. It's a paid-for pattern. It's called Maggie. And I have made tons of these versions with the shorter sleeves, like this one here. And I think I've only made one of the long sleeve version. And I had trouble turning it inside out. Maybe I'm going to make another one of those very soon. But for today, I really want to crank some dresses out. So I have a pattern piece here. This is the top pattern piece from this Maggie pattern here. And I've taken it and I've cut it out on felt because I've made a ton of these. I know some people will use paper patterns and they'll either place them on fabric and then draw around them and cut them out, or they'll pin them down. If I'm using paper patterns, I tend to pin. And so for me, what I do is if I can possibly take a pattern and cut out the pieces in felt, especially if it's a pattern I know I'm going to use a lot. The felt piece works well because you don't have to put as many pins on it, and it's kind of sticky a little bit. You know, there's some friction between the fabric and the felt. So it is much easier to cut pieces out. So for these particular type dresses, you cut a front and a back piece, or a lining piece, I guess I should say. So this would be the outer piece, and then you need a lining piece. I tend to use something like muslin or just plain white fabric. Sometimes I'll get fancy and use something that has a pattern on it, but if it is, it's still going to be off-white or white, because this way you are protecting the doll from possible staining. And of course, I always make sure that I wash my fabric. So yes, I have a little bit of this scrap left over from some other items I sewed, and it's obviously perfect size for one of the tops. And I'm probably going to layer. So I also have this really pretty fabric. It's got writing on it, and it does have a top and bottom, so I have to be a little cognizant of that. I think I'm going to make the skirts, some skirts out of this, which is basically just cutting a rectangle. And I'm not going to give you like super duper details as far as sizing and stuff like that, because this is a paid for pattern. Honestly, it's less than $5 from what I remember, and she's on Etsy. So yeah, I don't want to reveal that. I will say I recently found some free patterns that are very similar, so I think I'm going to try those out and maybe do some videos with those in the future. So this would be the skirt. This would be one top, so that would work really well. And then this would be a cute top part. And today I'm just going to crank out a bunch using this and this and this. I don't know, maybe 4 to 6 dresses. Let me see how much energy I have. All right, so I'm going to get to pinning. Well, before I start pinning the pattern and cutting it out, I realized I really need to iron the fabric because it has a little bit of lines on it. So especially this muslin, it's got quite a few wrinkles in it. So I'm going to just take a few minutes and iron it out. In fact, I use my ironing board like a table very often in my sewing room. So yes, I'm doing this first, and then I will put the pattern pieces on and start cutting them out. So I'm cutting out the skirts, and basically the skirts can be any size you want. I'm going to make mine a little shorter than usual, so I'm cutting out some rectangles that are going to be 3.5 inches by 11 inches. Yeah, so I think that'll be fine. I know I'm going to have to do some edging. I always zigzag. Some people use fray check. I'm still zigzagging. And I'm going to have to make sure I have enough to put on a hem, but I think that will work fine. In fact, you know what? I'm going to cut just a few of those and maybe do 2 dresses and see before I cut up a whole bunch of fabric and then realize I goofed up. Cool beans. Now I have everything cut out and ready to start stitching. Yep, so these are the skirts. I think I'm going to do this with the pink. So this top with the pink, I think, yeah, that looks really nice. And then 2, yes, these are the same, but I'm going to make 2 of these. Guess I'm making duplicates, which is fine. And yeah, so the next step that I take is I actually will take the muslin piece. This is going to be inside, and I put them together face to face. There's no one side or the other. That's another reason I like to use muslin. So one side's the same as the other. And I'm going to put these together, and I'm actually going to hand stitch. I am not great with the machine as far as really detailed work, and I have found that for me it is much easier for me to just sit here for a few minutes and hand stitch. Wait, is this right? Yeah, there. And hand stitch. So I'm going to stitch down here and around the neck and here and the sides before I turn it inside out. And yeah, so that's what I do. I usually take a marker like this, and this is a fabric marker, so it will go away after a while, actually very quickly. And I just I measure and then mark around 1/4 of an inch and do my hand stitching here all the way around in here. I have noticed that it just works better. I don't fight with my machine as much. I am actually thinking of getting a new machine, even though I really, really like my Singer 9600 Quantum machine. So there's that. But anywho, so yeah, now I'm just going to sit here and hand stitch for a little while. I still have to finish stitching up this 3rd top. Again, I'm doing it by hand. I tend to like to use what's called a back stitch. You could Google it. This isn't a back stitch tutorial. So I've got to keep going from here to here, then from here to here, and I'll have that one all stitched up. I already have these 2 ready to go. Again, you can see the muslin on one side. The other side is the pattern piece in there. They're both facing each other. And the next thing I do is I cut around the circle area, because anytime you have anything circular, it needs to be able to move a little bit. So very carefully I cut up to the stitch. Trim off the corners. Once I've done the cutting, I like to use a pair of pliers. These are bent nose pliers. If you make jewelry, you might have a pair of these. And I stick them through the bottom up to the arm area, kind of grab a piece of the fabric and pull it through. And there it is inside out. It's starting to take shape at this point. But first I'm going to take my iron, and it's not turned on yet, but when I turn it on, I will iron over it to make sure it's nice and crisp and flat and it's not bumpy. So I'm going to finish stitching this one, trim these two, turn them inside out, and then iron everything. And I'll be moving on to the skirt part next. I've ironed the tops, and now I am doing some finishing, just doing a little zigzag on the edges here. I did it on both of these tops and the skirt. This skirt is going to go with this top, but it has different thread. So yeah, I'm probably not going to use this pink thread on the top part. Before I change out my thread, I am going to fold this over and stitch a little hem and do a basting stitch here. I finished the hem and I added some basting stitch up here at the top so that I can gather it later on to create the skirt and attach it to, it'll be attached to this top over here. Before I go to that point though, I need to stitch these two together on the sides, just right sides together, and then I'll stitch right here and then do the same on the other side. Right, awesome sauce. I had enough thread in the bobbin. I didn't have to change it because I'm getting ready to change it to either off-white or white or cream or something to stitch these skirts and this top. But I went ahead and stitched up the sides. See, this is why I'm thinking of maybe getting a new machine. Sometimes when I get on the ends like this, my machine will just sort of eat up the edges. I mean, that's not going to be noticeable once I, flip it inside out and I add the skirt, but it really, it's like I'm fighting with the machine to not suck up my fabric down into the bobbin area. And yeah, I'm not really sure what to do about that. Even with fighting my machine, I got my tops made. So these will look super cute. There you go. It's coming together. Okay, I'm to the point where I'm connecting the skirts to the tops at this point. I changed out the thread in my machine after using the pink thread for the pink fabric. I now have cream thread in the machine, and I went ahead and did a little zigzag stitches on the edges of everything like I did before. I've got a hem on here, and I have done a basting stitch, which is just basically a big white stitch at the top of each of the skirts, and then I'm pulling the threads on the edges to gather it up, and then the next step is pinning right sides together, the top and the skirt. I've gotten this one finished, ready to sew. This one is finished and ready to sew, and I have to do the same with this. This is something that takes a little bit of time, for me at least, to do. With this a little bit more, try to make it a little bit more even as far as the gathers go. See, like here's, I've got a bunch here and then not so many here, so I'm going to mess around with this a little bit more off camera and add a few more pins. I always add quite a few pins when I'm doing this sort of stitching. And then I will go to my machine and stitch on here to stitch on the skirts to the tops. Then I just need to stitch the sides together and add a snap. Hang on to the end because we're going to model these dresses on some of my Blythe dolls. Alright, this wraps up the video. I always appreciate a thumbs up so that YouTube will see me. And of course, if you'd like to see more doll videos where I craft for my dolls, sew and unbox my dolls, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon so you get notifications. Have a wonderful dolly day.